This is Dolany TV, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, and welcome back to another edition of Edmonton Oilers discussion here on the channel today. Obviously, wanted to catch up on something I've been meaning to get to over the past few weeks, just haven't had time. And well, I think it's a good Sunday topic to kill some time as we head into another work week tomorrow. Obviously, a cooker down here in southern Alberta today. It's 31 degrees on the dial when I got in the car to go for coffee this afternoon. So, yeah, when it feels like the skin's a burning, well, let me tell you, it's for good reason. With that sun and that heat cranking out there, don't forget the smoke in the air. It's been a weird, wild summer, but we're getting through it. We're about a month and a week away from NHL captain skates getting underway throughout the NHL. Obviously, the Oilers, whether it starts up just first weekend of September or last weekend of August, however you want to map that out, will be interesting to see where that goes to par. But right now we've got obviously McLeod and Bouchard to square away and then pretty much sign one more guy and the off season's done. But in all of that, if you want to swing any deals, right, that's kind of been a topic as well here over the past few days. I know Low Tide just put out an article on the Athletic today saying, hey, you know what, maybe a midsummer change of direction in terms of the offseason wouldn't be a bad thing for the Oilers. Go out there, trade somebody, get somebody else in, let's go. That is a possibility, but I think there's a pretty good reason why that probably won't happen for the Oilers. They were recently ranked in the past about 2-3 weeks as the fifth worst prospect pool in the NHL, something that I think we knew was going to be coming down the pipe pretty much as soon as we traded Reed Schaefer, and obviously Michael Kesselring to the Arizona Coyotes as well. Our prospect pool gets thinner and thinner the closer and closer you get to the Stanley Cup. It's the way it works. You're trying to win. You got to trade assets to get bigger pieces. It's just the nature of the business. But just as we go through today, I really want to talk about just kind of where we're sitting with who we've got in the organization, because I don't think 28th out of 32 is necessarily the end of the world, because I think we're still in a pretty decent spot with some good up and comers coming through the system. You've got in the farm system this coming year, right? We've lost some guys off Bakersfield that have been regulars over my entire time covering the Bakersfield Condors and the Edmonton Oilers. But now we've got a new wave of players, and you kind of look at this core, right? I'm counting one, two, three, four guys over the age of 25 on the forward roster, signed NHL contracts by the Edmonton Oilers in the Bakersfield system. That being Kajula, Seth Griffith, Brad Malone, and Greg McKay. Key veterans for that team, which you need in the AHL as well. Carl Berglund's down there, right? A guy we signed a little bit ago. I think it was, 2-3 months ago we signed him. 23 years old, kind of a guy that's probably going to fill out a roster spot, might compete for an NHL spot the year after. Who really knows? I guess first thing is first, we got to see him in action in Bakersfield. Xavier Bourgault, who is 925 against the cap. Unlikely we see him early in the season, but we could see him at some point later in the NHL season if the Oilers so choose to go that route. Carter Savoy is obviously down there as well. He's 21 years old, 925 against the cap. You're going to hear that number a few times. Right, a guy as well we see a lot of promise in. Jaden Gruby, who we acquired for that pick to the New York Rangers earlier this season. Yeah, you know what? Jaden Gruby's another guy that we're going to see down the line. I think he was supposed to come in and replace Noah Philp, and Noah Philp instead leaves the organization as opposed to coming up to the NHL. He was kind of that bubble guy in case. Jake Chiasson, another great asset. He will turn pro with the Oilers farm team Bakersfield Condors this year, and he will look good doing it, I assume. A good little prospect, actually. And this is where this is all. I'm not saying any of these guys are going to be elite NHL players, but we are cultivating good, solid NHLers at last on the Bakersfield Condors farm team, whatever you want to say. You've got Tyler Tullio down there as well. I think we've all kind of seen the hype around him, and I think you're going to continue to see it evolve this year. James Hamlin, a solid fourth-line player for this team in the NHL. Obviously, you don't want to be running them out there all 82 this year, but a guy as well you would not mind having up for another 5, 6, 10 games this season if you have to. Matvey Petrov, again, will turn pro and look good doing it, I'm sure. He's drawn a lot of press over the past 2 years in the Oilers organization, and we'll see what he can do for them this year in Bakersfield. Drake Jula doesn't really count. Noah Phillips gone. So that's kind of where you're all sitting with these guys right now. Is for the Oilers, you've got a couple of options. And secondary to that, I just want to signal out too, you may see this year, you may see a couple of players come up that just because of cap constraints that you normally wouldn't. That being Brad Malone, that being Seth Griffith, and that being Greg McKegg. At some point, if you need a spot start, right, you're down in California, you're down a player on your fourth line, you might see one of these guys get into an NHL game with the Oilers. They're signed to a contract, but they're at 762.5. So they are 12.5K under the league minimum this year. So there is something to be said about those guys getting a little room in the NHL sometime this season. Probably on a California road swing would be my guess. Philip Broberg, obviously a guy that we're expecting to take big strides this year. Tough to call him a prospect with how much time he's played in the NHL, but also he's played very minimal games realistically. He's just been around a long time at this point, and only 22, 23 at this point. So keep an eye out for him to take some leaps and bounds. Noel Hoffenmeyer, I think this is where the prospect line gets blurred, right? This guy's 24 years old, kind of steps in as a very talented player on the Bakersfield Condors blue line, and I would be very interested to see at 8:45 against the cap what he does in terms of his season, whether he comes up in case of injury for the Oilers or what ends up coming for him, because I assume the Oilers didn't sign him to an NHL contract just to keep him in Bakersfield the entire season, right? Again, there might be some kind of plan there. Max Warner, another guy that'll turn pro this year. Be interesting to see what he does. Obviously, again, the hype around him is a lot bigger than his draft pedigree, which means, again, that ranking isn't necessarily true to the players. But again, the players have to outperform everything to go up the chart in terms of that prospect ranking. Philip Kemp, another solid just guy that you might see in the NHL one day, but nothing super special as of yet, but a guy, again, who's just kind of continuing to grow into his game here. 24 years old, and he'll go another year in Bakersfield and see what he can do. 25-year-old Cam Dineen, who signed another deal with the Oilers this year. He'll stick around with Bakersfield Condors. He's got NHL experience. I would assume we see him at the NHL level a little bit in case of injury this year as well. Again, this is kind of, we're going to rotate through guys and start seeing a little bit weirder development paths for these guys because of how many options we have in Bakersfield. Ben Gleason as well, another guy who's got NHL experience way back when, but another guy that you could call on at league minimum 775. The goaltenders, obviously, you know the card. It's Olivier Rodrigue and Ryan Fanti down there in Bakersfield. So keep an eye on those guys. And then you go to the reserve list, and these are the guys hanging around, right? The guys not signed to contracts yet, but we have the draft rights. Bo Akey, Maxim Berezhkin. Somehow Skylar Brendamore is still on there, even though he signed a deal with the Charlotte Checkers, I guess, because he still holds his NHL rights until August 15th. Matt Capone, Nathaniel Day, Maxim Denezhkin. You got Samuel Janssen. You've got Shane LeChance. You've got Jeremiah Lindewall, Joel Mata, Thomas Mazura, who I think is long gone at this point. Luca Musenberger, who's going to be a nice little ad for this Oilers organization. Here we'll probably sign him sometime during the season. And then Nikita Yaisev, who I doubt we see anything from him, but a 6th-round draft pick back in 2022. So that's where the Oilers organization is sitting, and this is where I will concur with the list, right? You're looking at a 28 out of 32 draft pick pool. You add in Dylan Holloway, obviously, to that as well, who's a top 50 prospect in the NHL right now, but very near the bottom of the top 50. So you kind of add this all together and you look at it, man, are we really in a world of hurt? Not necessarily, right? I think the prospect rankings would have been much more favorable to us had we still had Kesselring around, had we still had, of course, your guy Reed Schaefer still around, right? So that's two big key pieces that could have elevated us out of that bottom 5 into that mid 16, right? You think about from number 7 all the way down to number 25. You could have probably been somewhere in there as opposed to number 28. And obviously for Team 2 trying to win a Stanley Cup, number 25 through 7 is not necessarily worse. 7 is a stretch by all means, but it's one of those things. Number 25, you're kind of middle of the pack, lower end, but you're trying to win a cup. You're bankrupt in the cupboards to win a cup. It's kind of tough too, right? So, and you got to think, for the Oilers over the past few years, we have not had a ton of draft picks to play with. You go back to Ken Holland's first trade deadline, he traded away 2 second rounders and another pick for Matt Green, or yeah, Mike Green, and he traded away 2 second rounders for Andres Athanasiou. So you've got that, right? You've been missing picks ever since Ken Holland came to town, and now for the Oilers, you kind of sit here and, okay, well, we like the guys we have. They're pretty decent. We could cultivate some good NHLers out of them. But at the same rate, too, you're not talking about a Connor Bedard in your prospect pool. You're not talking about a Will Smith. You're not right. You're not talking about Logan Cooley with the Arizona Coyotes. You're talking about guys like Bo Akey being the big acquisition in the draft this year. You're talking about having traded Reed Schaefer. You're talking about still not knowing what you have fully in Philip Broberg. So there's a ton to go in this Oilers prospect pool. And when we were ranked 28th, I really don't take offense to that. That is fine and dandy because I like where this Oilers organization is at right now in terms of the NHL product, the chance to win a Stanley Cup, and obviously the ability to still wheel and deal to get players that are necessary to win a Stanley Cup should we go on chasing at the deadline. So friends, I'm Tyson, this is Stolany TV. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I will catch you on Monday when we should have some news breaking. Hopefully, if all goes according to plan with the Oilers getting back to business during the work week. I am up on out of here.